Hello, my name is Hauke Egermann and I'm a senior lecturer in the music department, and I would like to present you a mini lecture today. Why do we engage with music? Well, when we do research from within music psychology, a lot of people tell us that this is because of its emotional impact. People listen to music and people make music because it changes how they feel. And within music psychology and in our research group in the music department, we are doing research on this topic and we try to understand this. In order to do so, we typically conduct experiments. And a very simple experiment could go like this. I would present you two music excerpts and ask you how you feel when you listen to these two excerpts. Well, let's listen to the first one. And now let's listen to the second one. When we do this kind of research, a lot of people tell us that the first excerpt sounds rather happy to them and cheerful, and the second one rather sad and gloomy. So, why is that? Why does music create these emotions in us? Well, today I've brought you 4 different explanations that I would like to present to you now. The first one says that this is because of learned associations. So what do I mean by that? So maybe the music that I just presented to you featured some typical characteristics that might have been used previously in emotional contexts that are not musical, and therefore the music becomes emotional because it was associated with these contexts. So, for example, the excerpt 1, which sounded happy to us, might have used musical parameters that are typically used in happy contexts. So what kind of context could this be? Well, it could be, for example, a happy movie scene here, like this, the Titanic. You see a couple and they're in love and they're having fun and they're having a good time, and then you hear music and then you learn to associate their emotions with the music, and therefore music becomes emotional. And the same could have happened for the sad excerpt, of course, as well. So it was using musical parameters that were associated with sadness, and therefore it became sad. So this mechanism is based on learned associations between music and something else. There's another mechanism, another explanation, which is also based on learning, but here we are learning something about the music itself. And this one is called musical expectations. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think that music creates expectations, and these expectations in turn can create emotions. So when you listen to a piece of music in a particular context, we think that your brain will always try to predict what will happen next. And depending on what happens in the music, you could experience things like surprise, tension, satisfaction, or disappointment. So you're surprised if you hear something that you didn't expect. You're feeling tense if you're expecting that something is about to come, but you don't really know when and what exactly. You feel satisfied if you're able to anticipate the next musical moment correctly, and you feel disappointed if something happened in the piece of music that you were long that you didn't expect, and that doesn't satisfy you. So far, these are theories, and in our research group, York Music Psychology Group, we conduct experiments, and this was, for example, one experiment. So we asked a music student to play this piece, Density 21.5 from Edgar Varese, and then together with some colleagues, we did a computational analysis of the predictability of this music. So trying to work out what is very likely to happen next and what is less likely to happen next in this piece of music based on what we know about the music itself. And then we could, for example, identify this segment here in the piece that sounded like this. And in this particular musical context, that segment was unexpected by the listener, so they were not really able to anticipate that. And we could also measure that they experienced arousal on a subjective and physiological level, such as through changes of skin conductance or heart rate. So that's the second explanation. So music creates emotions through musical expectations. Let me present a third explanation to you, and that says that music is emotional because of expressive emotional movements that it represents. So what does that mean? Well, let's look into the two emotions, happiness and sadness again. If you look at two people who are feeling happy or sad, they probably would also behave in a particular way. So if you're happy, you move a lot, you run around. If you're sad, you're very slow and you don't move a lot. So when you move, your body also makes sounds. Let's listen to someone who's in a happy mood.
Have fun. Again.
All right.
And now let's listen to someone who's in a sad mood.
Have fun. Again.
All right.
So with the sounds that we make when we are emotional, either through our voice or through moving, through walking, we express how we feel. So if we compare these two expressions of happiness and sadness, you might have noticed that the happy voice was probably a bit higher in pitch than the sad voice. And the happy voice was also faster, and the movements were faster that were associated than the sad movements. And the sad walking. So let's listen to the two music excerpts from the very beginning again. So also in music, happy expressions tend to be associated with higher pitch, faster tempo, more regular, and sad expressions tend to be associated with lower pitch and slower tempos, more quiet expressions. So we can probably say there seem to be some kind of underlying, maybe even universal expressive parameters that apply to our voice when we express emotions here and to music at the same time. And that also apply to our body language when we move around and express our emotions. So how does expressing and recognizing an emotion then become to feeling an emotion your own? Because it's not necessarily the same thing. Well, we think that this is similar to a process that we call empathy. So if you hear a piece of music that expresses something for you, so that expresses happiness, you might feel happy because you're empathizing with something that is expressed in the music, and therefore it either makes you happy or sad. So it's a little bit like looking at a happy face or a sad face and empathizing with that, and therefore becoming emotional. So in order to test these theories, a couple of years ago, I conducted an experiment with a couple of colleagues where we compared Western Canadian listeners with Congolese pygmies. Who are Congolese pygmies? These are people that look like that, and they don't use electricity. So that means they don't use media, and they live very, very isolated in the rainforest in the Congo, and they basically never have heard Western music before. So if we present Western music to them and then measure their responses, like we did here, and as you can see in the photo, we can maybe work out if they respond similarly to the music compared to Western listeners. And this could indicate to us that there are universal expressive parameters in the music that have similar effects in Western and in pygmy listeners. That's something that we try to do. And let me present to you the results of this study. Here I show you the physiological recordings that we made from these participants. So on the bottom left, you can see here, you can see You can see skin conductance here. So that's a measure of arousal. And here we have the respiration rate. That's also a measure of arousal. So the bottom right. And as you can see, there are two lines here in each of these graphs. There's the blue line for Canadian participants, there's the Western participants, and then there's the red line for the Pygmy participants. So let's just focus on the blue line right now. So the Canadian participants. If we look into this graph here, so that's the physiological arousal measured through skin conductance, we can see that this music excerpt here, number 4, number 6, and also 11 and 17, they seem to have induced quite high physiological arousal in these listeners, whereas these excerpts number 5, number 8, and 9, maybe also 18, induced rather low arousal. So some pieces were more exciting and some were more calming. And we can see a similar pattern in this other graph here for respiration. So piece number 4 and piece number 6 also induced higher rates of respiration. So people were respirating faster. So that was Western music and Western participants. But now let's take a look into the Pygmies, how they responded. So for that, you have to take a look into the red line. And as you can see here, that red line is obviously not identical to the blue line, but it seems to share, to a certain degree, similar peaks. So here, for piece number 6, the Pygmies also responded with higher skin conductance compared to piece number 8. If we look into respiration, we can see also here that there are quite a lot of similarities. So the overall shape of this line looks quite similar, even though the Pygmies don't seem to respond as strong as the Westerners as a whole. But nevertheless, the Pygmies seem to respond to some underlying expressive qualities in the music, and that seems to induce universally physiological responses. So this is why I conclude that probably due to expressive emotional movements that were coded in the music, listeners experience emotional responses, and it also impacts our body correspondingly. However, we should not forget that music, of course, is also sound at the same time, and sound can be very activating. It can have a very direct effect on us as well. So a little bit like the alarm clock in the morning that wakes you up, or small children that start to cry, as it happens in my case. So loud sounds that are unexpected, that are dissonant, that have very high pitch, they also seem to have a direct influence on our physiology, on our arousal, and we experience them as pleasant or unpleasant, and that might also create emotional responses to us as well. So, why does music create emotions in us? I've just presented to you 4 different explanations. The first one said that this is because of learned associations. The second one said that this is because of musical expectations. The third one said that this is because of expressive emotional movement. And the fourth one said that this is because of activating sound. So the top 2 mechanisms, the first 2, are based on learning, and they explain why sometimes our responses to music are very different and not really similar. However, the bottom 2 mechanisms and explanations are probably more based on universal. So there are things that happen in lots of people in a very similar way. And this could be an explanation why music induces often also similar responses in us and bonds us together socially as different groups and creates a social bond between us. Thank you very much for listening to that. I hope it was interesting. If you want to find out more about our research, please visit our website, ympg.uk. And have a good day. Thank you very much, and hopefully I might see you in York at one point.